Hey y'all, happy Black History Month. So, the entire month of February, I'm going to be highlighting books from my history collection. Like I told you guys, I'm a history nerd and I've been collecting history books for years. I've got over 150 books on my shelves that are history, particularly African diaspora history. And I'm going to start by highlighting some of the books I consider special books in my collection. And these two books, I'm doing two books today, and these two books are particularly significant. The first one is the Tarikh al Fattash, and the second one is the Tarikh al Sudan. And the reason that these books are significant is because these are books that were written by African historians, not long after the actual history took place. And they focus on the Songhai Empire, the end of the Mali Empire and the Songhai Empire until up to the point where it collapsed because of its relationships with Morocco. Now, like I said, these are significant because a lot of times when we get books from history like this, they're written hundreds of years later, and they're written from people who are not from that culture. But these two books were actually written by Songhai scholars, and that's what makes them significant. So they were written about these empires, and like I said, they're around the same time period. Like they call the Tariq al Fattah the Timbuktu Chronicles, 1493 to 1599, and the Tariq al Sudan takes place a little sooner than that, stuff like that. Both of the books talk about Sunni Ali and Askia Muhammad. Sunni Ali was considered was the first or most notable empire of Songhai, because what you have to understand is that all these kingdoms existed. Like while Mali was going on, Songhai was going on as well. But Songhai was a vassal of Mali, and at some point, as the Mali power collapsed, the Songhai took over that region. And both these empires, like all the empires that were in this part of Africa, the Sahel, which is the western part of Africa, were concentrated around the gold trade, trading gold from the forests of Africa, like the area of Ghana, the Ashanti Empire, across the desert, across the Sahara, and they did a trade like gold for salt, because salt was very valuable from where they from. And for hundreds of years, probably thousands of years, the majority of gold that was in Europe and the rest of the world came from this region in Africa. And so controlling those trade routes were very important. And to have, these, like I said, these books were written by African scholars. So what you get here is something that's probably more authentic. Like I told you before, a lot of times when you're dealing with Europeans or other people telling African history, it's usually filled with some of the misconceptions and some of the prejudice that they bring along with it, because they always have these situations of disbelief when they find something that happens in another country, another part of the world, that was probably better or as good as what they had. So, that's another conversation. But these two books were very important to me, especially when I was doing my research for my stories. They take place in those regions. And it gave me so much information, some information that I had not heard from any other sources. This book right here, the Tariq al Sudan, was the hardest book for me to find. And probably is the most expensive book in my collection, because I was determined to have this book because it was just so vital and important to the research that I was doing. And I was so glad that I got it, because the details that were in this book were things that I had not read anywhere else. They do talk about Khan Musa's trip to Mecca, and they talk, and even Askia Muhammad and did that trip as well, because the pilgrimage to Mecca was something that was important for all worshippers of Islam to do at least once in their life. So it talks about that as well. But again, these two books, if you're very interested in African history, especially African history based on the Sahel region and the empires that grew up and prospered in those regions, these two books are very cool books to have in your collection. The Tariq al Fattash is going to be easier to find. It's going to be less expensive, and like I said, it covers a lot of the information that's in the Tariq al Sudan. But to have both of the books is a really cool thing for a serious African history collector to have. So those are the first two books I'm talking about this month. the Tarikh al Sudan and the Tarikh al Fattash. And y'all go find them and check them out. Y'all take care. Peace.